Exodus chapter 14. We're going to finish what we started last week. And I mentioned it last week, but I'll mention it again today. When I get back from Israel, we will be looking at the next building project in the Bible and making some important remarks regarding that. But we want to finish off what we started last week. We're in the book of 1 Samuel, and in chapter 5, we introduced a thought, a lesson, but really a conscious idea of how involved God can be in our lives. This story in 1 Samuel 5, for those of you who weren't here, for those of you who were here and maybe sleeping or who have forgotten, it was a great story. It's the story of the Philistines coming across a 7-month span of bad luck, of misfortune. Things were going as good as could have gone for the Philistines. They had just beaten their neighbor, their arch nemesis, Israel. Not only did they beat them in battle, but they took their most prized possession. They took the famed Ark of the Covenant. And they rushed off to their homeland, celebrating their victory and marching the Ark of the Covenant through all the crowds and through all the dances. And it was a great moment. And they thought life couldn't get any better for our nation, for our people. This is the height of our country. We are dominant, we're leaders, and we took their greatest possession, their God's seat, if you would. Well, the next morning after that battle, they woke up and found their wooden god, Dagon, on the ground, face first, before the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm sure whoever discovered that probably wanted to cover that up pretty quickly, but it got out, and they put Dagon back in his place, set him where he was supposed to be, and went through their day. The next day, however, the next morning, their Dagon was again on the ground, but his head was chopped off, his arms were chopped off, and all he had left was that fish stump, the mermaid god that he was. It's all what was left of him. And they thought, oh man, this isn't right. There's something wrong here, that he would have fallen off one night and fallen down and got cut up the second night. But they went on their way. And over the next few days and weeks, maybe months, in the place that they brought the Ark of the Covenant, they were discovering that there was an outbreak of a certain uncomfortable disease, or symptom maybe, and the Bible calls it emerods. But as I explained to you last week, those were not emerods of some mysterious sort. They were hemorrhoids. The Ark of the Covenant was a real pain in the rear for them, all right? I mean, that's exactly what it was. And so they were having all these issues, and they said, finally, get the Ark of the Covenant out of our city, because there's a good chance, this isn't coincidence, there's a good chance the Ark of the Covenant is causing all of our pain and discomfort and all of these issues in our city. So they sent it to another city, and the same thing happened there. And they began to play hot potato with the Ark of the Covenant because there was an outbreak of this painful symptom that no one wants, that really disrupts life. But in addition to Dagon falling down, to having his head cut off, to having all these hemorrhoids throughout the nation, people were dying. There was a lethal illness in the midst of all that. So the people who didn't die had the hemorrhoids. The god was no good. Remember, the god was dead. So they would naturally turn to Dagon to heal them from their pain, to heal them from all the disease, but he was gone. God has an incredible sense of humor. He took away their god and then gave them all the illnesses to which they could find no solution for. Well, they realized that this was probably not coincidence, that all this over the course of 7 months, the Bible says, took place immediately after they took the Ark of the Covenant. So the Philistine leaders, they turned to the spiritual advisors in the land, and the spiritual advisors understand they're not people who follow the God of Israel. They're people who follow idolatry, they're people who are pagan, but they are the spiritual advisors. They were tapping into the spiritual dimension, and they were able to understand elements of divinity. They were able to understand deities in general, and so they said to the leaders, hey, you need to return the Ark of the Covenant back to Israel. That is their God, and there's a good chance their God is behind all of our misfortune. But just to make sure, let's do it in such a way that if the Ark makes it back to Israel, then we'll know that God is behind all this. And if that's the case, then our misfortune should stop with the return of the Ark of the Covenant. And they said, let's do it in such a way that if the ark doesn't get back to them, then we'll know it's just a matter of chance. Chance just brought all this upon us. So they got 2 cows that have never been yoked before. They have never worked together before. They never spent time plowing the fields, and they yoked these 2 cows together. And these 2 cows had baby calves that were back at the farm. And the direction of Israel was away from the farm. So the Philistines said, all right, if these 2 cows that have never worked together before, they have never had a yoke on them at all, and their babies are back there, if they head back to Israel without any problem, then we know this is a spiritual thing. This is a divine intervention in our nation because we stole the Ark of the Covenant. Very smart. They understood that it was possible that all this was just coincidence, just chance, but highly unlikely. We talked last week about how we go through things at times that seem like one thing after another. And we talked last week about the difference between chance and divine activity. There is a difference between coincidence and divine providence. Chance does exist. Solomon was a major proponent of it. Solomon, who spent much of his life observing out his window and walking down the streets of his nation and traveling abroad, he observed mankind. He observed life. That's why he was the one who said, all is vanity under the sun. He was the one that put things in perspective, and it was him who said in Ecclesiastes 9:11, he said, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. He said, but time and chance happens to all of them. You know, life happens. You can't outsmart life. You can't outrun life. You can't pray yourself out of life. Christians miss this fact, this basic fact of the Scriptures nestled right in the middle of the Bible. Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, they're so practical, they're so obvious to us if you read them that life stinks, no matter who you are. But for some reason, those of us who know Christ as our Savior, who understand we're children of God by our faith in Christ, we go through life for some reason thinking we should be exempt from life. Don't we? When a bird, and I know you all like this, but when a bird poops on your head, your first instinct is to, God, why did you do that? Right? Oh no, you're all super spiritual, that's right. Yeah. When your car breaks down, you don't say, this stupid car or this stupid road or this life. You know what you often say? Maybe not audibly, but I guarantee you silently you say, God, why did you allow that? We hold God hostage for everything in this life. The reality is God set this big ball on its axis and sent it spinning, and it spins on its own axis, and it revolves around the sun, and it does its thing. God is not up there pushing it around and dictating everything that happens. He created life, and He let life go. You say, well, how come this world is so bad? Because we sinned. God gave this planet life. It was going to be wonderful, paradise. And God says, go have fun. And then we disobeyed Him and we introduced the curse. And so now this ball that spins produces thorns. And now that the predators have sharp teeth and people have an evil desire to steal and to hurt. And so there's crime and there's animals eating animals and people hurting people. And we get old and we die and disease takes over and there's pain and sorrow and there's this circle of life. It was never supposed to be a circle of life. We were supposed to live forever. But this world's tough. It stinks. And we blame God for all of that when it's just most of the time life. And when life becomes consistently bad, it's a time for us to stop and reassess where we are. So life has what's called chance. We call it coincidence. If it's a bad chance, we call it bad luck. And we all experience bad luck. I'm trying to think what has happened to me over the course of my life where it's been bad luck. A lot of things. A lot of things are bad luck. I mean, I'm driving on the thruway years ago to go visit someone in the hospital. I'm doing my job as a pastor. I'm going to pray with them. Certainly, everything should go well. Clearly, God is pleased with my righteous deeds. And I'm driving along singing hallelujah to the Lord, praying with my Bible next to me, planning on ministering, and all of a sudden, bink! I look at my windshield and there's a crack. Shh. What happened? Some stupid truck went over the Skyway and a stone went flying all the way onto the 190 and hit my windshield. You must know, there were a lot of non-pastors on the 190 at that time. And I say, God, where did you go? Why did you let that happen? No, you know what? I said, oh, wheel hits stone, stone leaves wheel, goes to the ground at 9.8 meters per second square. And guess who's there right then? Me. Right? God didn't orchestrate a stone to hit my windshield because I'm a bad person. Nor is he going to protect me from that stone because I think I'm doing a good thing. Here's the bad news. You're not as special as you think. Right? I'm not as special as I want to think I am. Bad stuff happens to good people because bad stuff happens to every people. You're not exempt from life. I'm not exempt from life. But here is the good news. So the bad news is you're not as special as you think. The good news is life is very random. It's very random. In other words, it's unpredictable. You're not going, I guarantee you, for the rest of my life, I could drive down under the Skyway or on the 190 right by the Skyway. I could drive there every day, 4 times a day, the rest of my life. I can almost guarantee I will never get a stone to hit my windshield again. I could at night take up a bushel full of pebbles, throw it on the Skyway, and hope that some truck will hit it and I'll hit my windshield. It's too random. We can't even predict bad things. I know you're thinking, well, how come the Bills always get the bad calls, right? You know why they get the bad calls? Because they have routinely stinked. We are the common denominator for most of our problems, right? So maybe you get a car and you go through brakes a lot. And you say, man, I just keep getting cars that have bad brake systems designed. No. You brake too hard. It's that simple. We like to, and you can go get the same car made by the same manufacturer, and the brakes will be bad, and you can't blame the manufacturer. It's your braking. We are often the common denominator of our life. But if you can take away the common denominator, if you say, listen, I got a stone hit my windshield today, tomorrow I had a banana hit the wheel and it got stuck in the brakes and it blew up my wheel, and the next day a bird flew into my rear view mirror and blew that up, you can't do that. You are not the common denominator. That's either a wildly inconsistent string of bad luck or this is what we're talking about, or there's something more going on. Like the Philistines. Something beyond chance, something beyond coincidence, something beyond even you creating the problems in your life. It could be nothing more than the hand of God behind you. And that has happened to us more than we probably would recognize, and that's why I want to talk about it, is because we need to recognize it. You say, well, why would God do that? Why would God, who we say is so loving and so kind and so good, why would God put this string of misfortune into my life? Why would he give me hemorrhoids for 7 months? Why would he give me a problem with my eyes? Why would he take away my job? Why would I get a bill in the mail? Why would my car break? Why would my refrigerator fall apart? Why would my dryer fall apart? Why would he do this to me? Well, I'm going to submit to you at least 4 reasons based on biblical stories this morning of why you might be experiencing one thing after another. One thing after another. You're in Exodus 14. I won't be reading that until I tell the story. I do not have the time to go through all the stories, so I'm going to rehearse the stories to you. There'll be 4 Bible stories, and it will be your homework to vet whether or not I'm telling you the truth, and you can go through in detail and read those stories and hopefully glean the same things we're talking about today. But the book of Exodus, in particular in chapters 5 through 14, tell the story of a man by the name of Pharaoh. But that's his title. We don't know his name. He is the nameless king of Egypt. And he is the king of Egypt during the time of the Jewish Exodus. The children of Israel, God's people, chosen by God, descendants of Abraham. They had dwelt in Canaan, but during a famine they came to Egypt, and Jacob and his sons and his daughters and their large family then took root in Egypt. And they were there for over 4 centuries. While they were there, they made it home. But here's the problem with home. It became not home sweet home, it became home bitter home. Joseph, who was the prime minister of Egypt, when his father and family came into Egypt, he had died, and there was a new king of Egypt who didn't know Joseph, didn't appreciate what he did for the nation, didn't appreciate who he was. And so he said, hey, all these descendants of Joseph, all these Israelites, they're going to be my slave labor. They're going to be our laborers because they're not like us. We shouldn't be building our cities. They should be building it for us. And so they oppressed them and they put them into hard bondage. And for 400 years, they cried to God, deliver us, deliver us. And God, because he prophesied a specific time he would deliver them, waited and waited and waited. And meanwhile, a young man was born into a family of Israel who was then fostered and became a child of an Egyptian woman. His name was Moses. You should know Moses. That name should ring a bell for all of us. Moses would grow in an Egyptian palace for 40 years. After 40 years, he would be discontent with who he was as an Egyptian when he knew he was a Hebrew, and he went out and did something he shouldn't have done. He killed an Egyptian to protect a Jewish man. That led to his exile. He fled into the wilderness, and for 40 years he spent time in the middle of nowhere, doing nothing for no one. But then the burning bush got his attention, the backside of the desert, and God spoke out of that burning bush and told Moses to go back into Egypt and to deliver his people. And through some conversation, Moses submitted to God, went back into Egypt and said to Pharaoh, hey, Pharaoh, God said, let my people go. And Pharaoh just said, yeah, who's your God again? Because I've got hundreds of thousands of people doing my labor for me, and there's no way I'm letting you go. In fact, if I let you go, politically my career would be in jeopardy. Financially, our nation would be devastated, and selfishly, I'm just not going to do that. That was a mistake. He told God no, and as a result, God initiated the famous plagues of Egypt, and it would be for Pharaoh one thing after another. First, all the water in Egypt was turned to blood. All the drinking water was turned to red blood, and therefore they lost their fresh water. After that, there was an infestation of frogs. You know, the Bible says that the frogs went everywhere in Egypt, and it specifically mentions the beds. I'm guessing these weren't toads, right? I'm guessing these were big old slimy fat frogs. Where's Gracie? Gracie, are you in here? Gracie Baddock? She's downstairs? Okay, watch the Trinidad video. Gracie Baddock had a frog that was this big, and when she grabbed it, she squeezed it, and urine came out like, I mean, a cup worth of it. It was incredible. But that's the kind of frog that's in your bed, ladies. That's the kind of the frog that's in your kneading troughs. It's in the ovens. They're everywhere. So Pharaoh's having a bad week. All the water turns to blood. All the frogs come into the home. What happens after that? There's lice. An infestation of lice, both in men and in beasts. After the lice, there was infestation of flies. And the Bible says not just a few of them, swarms of flies. I hate flies. How many of you hate flies? I hate flies. In fact, poor Pastor Phil, we're trying to have our meeting Monday, but now that they've opened up the addition here, some flies are getting in. And the whole time, I'm not focusing at all what he's saying. I'm just swatting at the flies because I hate them. And I got it. You must know I got one, and I celebrated. I did an NFL dance right there in the office. I took him down. That was one little fly. Could you imagine having swarms of flies coming into your home, into your job, into the office, into your vehicle, your chariot? Everywhere you go, swarms of flies that would drive you crazy. Water turns to blood, frogs everywhere, lice everywhere, flies everywhere. What happens next? All your good taste in steak dies because a pestilence came in and killed the cattle. After that, there was the 6th plague where boils and pustules on man and beast. Boils everywhere. The Philistines would have taken the hemorrhoids over all this. Then you have plague number 8, the infestation of locusts. They came through and they ate everything that was left from plague number 7, which I didn't mention, which was hail. And then there's plague number 9, darkness for 3 full days. Now, before I get to plague number 10, is it possible that life could be that random? That you would wake up one day and all your fresh waters turn to blood? The next day you've got frogs everywhere like never before. The third day you've got lice on everyone like never before. The fourth day you've got flies everywhere like never before. The fifth day you've got pestilence in your cattle. You've got hail coming down from the sky. You've got darkness for 3 days. Is it possible life could be that random? Life does bring hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and typhoons. Life does bring storms and lightning. Life does bring problems, diseases in animals. Life does bring problems and diseases in people. But does life bring all that at once? The simple answer is no. Life is very random. This is not random. And the 10th plague, unfortunately, it took Pharaoh this long to get it, but the 10th plague started to get his attention. You know what happened in the 10th plague? The firstborn, the oldest of every family, died. It's been one thing after another, one tragic thing after another. Well, Pharaoh, after losing his oldest, was distraught and realized he couldn't fight God any longer, and so he says to Pharaoh, or to Moses and Aaron, "Get out! Get out!" And they thrust out the Israelites, and off the Israelites go. But Pharaoh began to rethink, why did I do that? I just let my workforce go, and these people took my son, and I want to get revenge, and I want to get them back here. And so he saddles up his horse, he gets the army and says, let's go after them. And they come out to find the Israelites encamped against the Red Sea, and they encompass them. Of course, we know the story. Moses all night long spreads his arms out wide, and an east wind comes and separates the Red Sea, and the Israelites begin to go down into the Red Sea on dry ground, and they're marching through, and the Egyptians foolishly follow them in. Look at verse number 24. I want you to see that they weren't done experiencing one more bad thing after another. Verse 24, Exodus 14, "And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians." And verse 25, God just miraculously and divinely, without any hand involved, just took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily. Listen to what the Egyptians would say now. "So that they said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians." You know, the soldiers realized it. Pharaoh, in his hard heart and bitterness of soul and pride, said, "No, we do not flee from God." But he missed the point. And I don't want you to miss the point either, because if you're experiencing one bad thing after another, the reality of this Bible story teaches us that God may be, He just may be resisting you. And can I tell you, you're not going to win if God is fighting you? I don't know what your life is like. Only you know, and that's for you to only know. But if you're doing something that God doesn't want you to do, He might be just resisting you with one bad thing after another. And you'd be making a mistake if you, like Pharaoh, pushed it aside and no big deal. We can deal with the blood. We can deal with the frogs. We can deal with the flies. We can deal with the lice. We can deal with the pestilence. We can deal with the hail. We can deal with the locusts. We can even deal with the darkness. In fact, if we have to, we'll even deal with the death of loved ones. Yeah, but your wheels are falling off. The lug nuts are turning backwards and coming off. That's not supposed to happen. Something is wrong here. This isn't life. We'll deal with it. That's a hard-hearted spirit. And God is trying to get your attention. God told Pharaoh, "Let my people go." And because he said no, over and over, God brought one bad thing after another into his life. What should you do this morning or in the future if you experience one bad thing after another? Have an honest assessment and ask yourself, is God resisting me? Is God resisting me? And if He is, after the lice or after the flies or after the hail, after something minor early on, submit to God lest He take you as far as He took Pharaoh. You will not win if you're fighting God. Turn over to Job chapter 42. Job chapter 42. Let me give you a second reason through a second Bible story. This is the story of Job. Job is described in the Bible as the best of men. He was upright. He feared God. He eschewed evil. Job was so good that he went and sacrificed for his children just in case they cursed God. That's how good Job was. That's how righteous Job was. And even though he was the best of men, the book of Job tells us he experienced the worst of circumstances. This great man would be subjected to one bad thing after another. You say, what happened? Well, first, his agricultural portion of his business was stolen. One day, the Bible tells us that a messenger came and said, Boss, all your oxen and all your donkeys, they were stolen by our neighbors, and the employees responsible for those animals were killed. That's tragic. It's a big part of his business that was taken away in just a moment. And while he was talking to this messenger, another messenger came running and said, Boss, fire came down from heaven and consumed the textile department. All the sheep, they've been burned up, and the employees responsible for those sheep, the shepherds, they got burned up too. And so here's this business owner watching his agricultural part of his business, now his textile part of the business, both taken from him in a moment, and all those employees that he loved and cared for, they were dead. Moments later, another messenger came to Job and said, Job, I'm so sorry. The taxis, the transportation business, the movers and shakers of our business, they're gone. The camels, they've been stolen by another neighbor, and the employees responsible for the camels, they've been killed as well. So he's losing his workforce. Men and women he invested in, men and women he surely loved. He's lost his sheep, he's lost his oxen, he's lost his donkeys, he's lost his camels. Boy, this is one bad thing after another, isn't it? But those first three messengers didn't even compare to the fourth one. You say, what did the fourth one have to say? I imagine that fourth messenger had the hardest time getting the words out. Boss, your 10 kids, boss, they were all together, and a great wind came from the wilderness, and boss, I'm so sorry. They're all gone. What camels? What sheep? What donkeys? What employees? My boys and girls. Yeah. It's a bad day. It was one bad thing after another. You say, what happened? Well, Job, I told you, he was a great guy. Tearfully was able to get the words out. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. It's amazing. But that's not the end of the story. Because this string of misfortune, this string of bad luck, if you would, when does fire come down from heaven? When did two neighbors attack at the same time? When does a wind come and knock a whole house down all in the same day? This isn't just bad luck. This isn't coincidence. Something else is going on. Well, shortly thereafter, if you read the book of Job, you'll learn that Job would lose one more thing, and he will lose his health. He would suffer painful boils from the crown of his head to the sole of his foot. While he's mourning the loss of his family, while he's trying to absorb the loss of his business, his income, while he's trying to deal with a wife who cannot handle it, who's saying to him, curse God and die, this man was dealing with extreme pain. So much pain that he would take a potsherd and scrape his flesh and sit in the ashes. This is one bad thing after another. Who is responsible for all of this? Now be careful who you answer. I can tell you who did it, but he who did it is different than he who allowed it. He who did it is different than he who was ultimately responsible for it. I have this idea that God is still God, and whatever happens to us, He is aware of it, He signs off on it, He allows it. And even though Satan and him had a conversation about Job, God ultimately gave Satan permission. That makes God responsible for one thing after another in Job's life, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Don't be afraid to answer that question. Because one day you're going to wake up and you're going to look at your tragedies, you're going to look at your life, and you're going to say, who allowed for this? You have to confront the reality that God did. We're afraid to do that. I tell people when they come to me and they're facing bad health or a loss of a loved one or a situation that's just tragic, and I have to tell them when they wrestle with it, I have to say, you understand God signed off on this. I didn't say He initiated it. I didn't say He caused it. But God is aware of it. I told you that's exactly what I had to ask my father. Dad, you do know God allowed for this. Which means you have to confront the reality that God said yes, in this case, to cancer. I know it was life that brings the curse, that brings our disease, our illness. I know it's sin that takes our life eventually, but again, God is still God. And He has to sign off on whatever happens to us unless we're the ones that do it. If you want to walk off a cliff, God's not signing off on that. That's your free will. Right? So don't blame God for your decisions. But if a bird comes flying to this window and pecks your eye out, God signed off on that. You say, really? Does He not have the hairs of your head numbered? Meaning He knows what's going to happen to you that is beyond your control. Now, if you want to do something to your life that's different, that's your free will. But if someone's going to come in here and shoot up everybody in this building, you can be sure God is aware of it. And you can be sure God signed off on it. Well, why would He do that? That's exactly what we're talking about today. I don't know. But I can give you some reasons why He did some things in people's lives. Why Job? Why all these bad things, one after another? Well, I believe it was for a specific purpose, and it was to refine Job. I cannot go through all the story and the details of the story, but understand that through the course of Job's mental, emotional, and spiritual processing of the events that he went through and dealing with his three friends who were not very good comforters, he revealed why he was being exposed to all this tragedy. And it was because he had some self-righteousness in him. Look at chapter 42, verse number 2. You'll see in this passage that God used the fire of suffering to reveal the flaw of a righteous man. Listen now, in order to make him better. Verse number 2, Job says this to God: I know that Thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from Thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I, Job, uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech Thee, and I will speak. I will demand of Thee, and declare Thou unto me. I have heard of Thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth Thee. Verse 6, look what Job says. A guy who was upright, he eschewed evil. He thought he didn't deserve all this. Verse 6, wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. What's he repenting for? He's repenting for his resilient, self-righteous attitude to God, that when God exercised His liberty, His authority, His providence over a man, over a creature, when God allowed for this man to go through hard times, Job said, how dare you? Read the book. Job said, I'm righteous. I don't deserve this. And God said, whoa, whoa, whoa. You think too highly of yourself. You think your righteousness demands you an exemption from the hardship of life. And over the course of the conversation between Job and God, Job realized, I have spoken out of line. I have said things I didn't even know. You are God, and blessed be the name of God. I repent in sackcloth and ashes. He realized he had become self-righteous. And God used the fire of this trial to bring that dross up out of that metal and make him better. And so verse 10, the Lord, verse 10 of Job 42, turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave him twice as much as he had before. Verse 12, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. Why? Why go through one bad thing after another? I don't know, but one of those reasons may be God might be trying to refine you. Because when we go through tough times, as I alluded to in the introduction, we tend to turn to God and say, why are you doing this to me? Why did you allow this to happen to me? You realize just by asking that question, you're accusing God of injustice? I would ask this, why not? Ooh, yeah, this is something I should park on, right, Justin? I'm going to park on this one right here. Why don't we wake up every day and say, God, why haven't you killed me yet? I mean, do I think I'm that special? Have you not sinned recently? How does it feel when you sin? How do you feel when you pray to a holy God and you say, God, I'm so sorry I did that again. God, I can't believe I thought that. God, I can't believe I said that. God, I can't believe my motive was so selfish. I can't believe how vain I am. Do you ever think to yourself, how does God put up with me? And then when something bad happens, boy, we forget all about that. God, how could you do this to me? And God's thinking, I can give you like 4,000 reasons why life does this to you. Well, we are just not as wonderful as we think we are. If something bad happens to us, it's probably because we deserved it. Somebody back there agrees. All right, you all a bunch of self-righteous, good-for-nothings. Man, I'm telling you, we need to be refined. And trouble refines us because it exposes that we think way too much of ourselves. Way too much. Thank you. All right, we'll get going. Turn to Genesis chapter 50. You're stuck here now. It's noon. I am not stopping because I'm going to be in Israel next week, and there's no way I'm coming back in 2 weeks and making enemies. This is not a popular message in today's day and age. People are so sensitive, you know. Could you imagine if I went to a public school and said, you all aren't that real special. You hurt my feelings, you know, and people be crying. I'm telling you, when you see God for the first time, you're going to realize who you are and who I am. You understand the face of God? Heaven and earth can't even be in its presence because Revelation says it flees away. God is so holy we can't grasp it. He's so strong and mighty we can't understand it. He is our creator who created us to be perfect. We fail him on a daily basis. The only reason we breathe today is because of his mercy. And so yes, when your third luxurious air-conditioned cruise control car has a flat tire, be careful to say, God, how could you do this to me? You know what God would show you? If he could open up the portals of eternity, he would roll back beneath you the horror of hell and say, that's what I could do to you justly. So a tire on your beautiful Cadillac? Get out of here. Get out of town, right? Right? Come on. Come on. You'll make me feel better about myself, all right, if you just come along with me here. If I don't do it, who is, right? If I don't tell you how it is, who else is going to do that? All right, let's go. Verse 19 of Genesis 50. We're not going to read that yet. I just wanted to get you to pay attention. All right, Genesis. So I got to tell us, I'm in trouble, Fozzie. It's 12:02. I'm really panicking up here. Give me your permission to keep going. All right, thank you. He's standing back there. He's like a security guard, like going to pounce on me. Genesis. So we're talking about a whole different story now. We've got Pharaoh and God's resisting him. We've got Job and God's refining him. Joseph's a great guy, isn't he? Here he is, this 17-year-old young man. This is when he shows up in Scripture. He gets these dreams. He has a colorful coat. His father favors him. That's not good for Joseph, but that's what he does. But God favors him. So Joseph has all this favor from both men and God. And he goes and sees his brothers, and his brothers don't have that favor, and they hate that. So they hate him. And one day, Joseph's minding his own business, doing what his father tells him to do, and he's just going to check in on the brothers to give his father a report how they're doing. He comes out there, and what do they do to him? They take him, because they see him from a distance, says, here comes this dreamer, let's get him and kill him. And they don't do that, but they take him, they tear his coat off, and they throw him in a pit. Understand, this is the first time in his life he is imprisoned unjustly. Right? In a pit that you can't get out of, you're there for nothing wrong. Imprisoned unjustly. Remember that, because it's going to happen over and over in his life. Moments later, after the brothers realize they can't kill him, they can make some money off him, so these Ishmaelites come, and they're human traffickers, and so they take Joseph, and then they take Joseph, the brothers, shackle him, and sell him into the hands of the Ishmaelites. If you have chains on you and you're put in somebody else's authority without your permission, is that an imprisonment? Yes. Was he put there for any wrong that he did? No. This is the second time he is imprisoned unjustly. Yes? He gets to Egypt. And from the Ishmaelites, he gets sold into the house of Potiphar, and he becomes Potiphar's slave. Does he have the permission to leave Potiphar's house? Or is he being held against his will? Being held against his will? Did he do anything wrong to end up in Potiphar's house? No. Third time in his young life, he is imprisoned unjustly. You know what's happening here? It's one thing after another. What happens over the course of time? Pharaoh, or Potiphar's wife, evidently has a hard time just behaving, and so she sees Joseph and says, hey, honey, how about we do some things we shouldn't do? The boss won't know. And Joseph resists her and says, no, 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 no. But eventually, she gets angry, and she accuses him of rape, doesn't she? What happens? Potiphar comes home and believes his wife. So Joseph gets placed into prison. Unjustly or justly? Unjustly. Here we go. It's one thing after another, God. It was first my brothers, then the Ishmaelites, then Potiphar, and now the prison. I haven't done anything wrong. You can be sure in prison there, Joseph is having this self-assessment. He's thinking, boy, is it me? He had to have been. Am I the common denominator? Did I do something wrong to my brothers? Did I do something wrong to the Ishmaelites? Did I do something wrong to Potiphar? Did I do something wrong to Potiphar's wife? What's going on? Well, we're not done yet. The baker and the butler, they come down in prison because Pharaoh was unhappy with them. They have these dreams. Joseph interprets them. You have to read this on your own. Joseph interprets them. One gets set free. The other one, unfortunately, gets put to death. But the butler gets set free. And Joseph says to him, hey, butler, can you please tell somebody out there that I'm in here unjustly? I was wrongly accused and wrongly convicted. Can you let somebody know? Sure, sure, sure. Well, 2 years go by. He was forgotten. And his unjust imprisonment continues, and he has to think, man, my brothers rejected me. The Ishmaelites didn't even want me. Potiphar's wife and Potiphar, they rejected me, and the butler doesn't even help me out. It must be me. Well, we're granted the luxury of perspective and seeing it wasn't Joseph. There was nothing wrong with Joseph. Joseph didn't create that problem in any one of those circumstances. They were matters of life outside of his control, yes? But a string of bad luck, a string of misfortune that he didn't cause. So was it coincidence? Or was God behind it? Well, God was behind it. It was one thing after another over the course of 15, 20 years that when you look at it, boy, just everything seems to go the wrong way with my life. What was happening here? Well, I'm going to tell you, God was not resisting him. God was not even refining him. God was simply repositioning him. Look at verse number 19. This is Joseph speaking to his brothers after his father died, and they were fearful he would seek revenge because of their initial wrongdoing that led to his lost childhood. And in verse 19, he says to them, fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought it evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. You know, it's possible. I'm not going to tell you it is, but it's possible if you're going through one bad thing after another, that over the course of your life, or the course of the past year, or the course of the past 6 months, or the past week, whatever it may be, if bad things are happening in your life consistently that go beyond coincidence, beyond bad luck and chance, it's possible God's just trying to reposition you, put you in a place that you're going to be more useful, that you're going to be more profitable, a place where you might do much more than if everything was going well over here. Had Joseph stayed in his house under his father's leadership when he was 17 till he was 30, that family would not have food during the famine.
Had Joseph stayed there and God kept his life so wonderful and rosy and peachy keen, and he never dealt with rejection, he never dealt with unjust imprisonment, he would have been right there when the famine hit, and that family would have not been spared from the consequences of that famine. You say, well, why would God do that? Because Joseph wasn't going to leave Daddy's tent when he's getting everything. So God had to get him out of there. And God did it through a string of misfortune. God may not be punishing you. God may be setting you up to be used in a way that you could never imagine. He was responsible for saving his family. And at the end of all that misfortune, he looked back and said, you know, in the middle of it, that really stunk. But I'm so glad that God did that, because I today get the privilege of taking care of my family. Turn quickly over to Numbers chapter 22. I'll give you the fourth and final reason, at least in Scripture through stories. Very quickly, if you would. Numbers chapter 22. God used one thing after another to resist his enemy Pharaoh. God used one thing after another to refine his servant Job. And God used one thing after another to reposition Joseph in order to save his family. This story in Numbers 22 is the story of God redirecting or attempting to redirect the prophet Balaam. You ever need redirection? Redirection meaning you're going in the wrong direction. Meaning God sees where you're heading and it's not good. And he's not resisting you, he's not fighting you because you're not fighting him. You're just chasing money, maybe? And that's exactly what this story is all about. Who's Balaam? Balaam's a prophet that when the Israelites were wandering through the wilderness, they were increasing in size, and all the inhabitants of the land were getting scared. They were getting fearful. And the Midianites in particular said, whoa, these Israelites threaten our life. And so they tried to hire this prophet named Balaam to come and curse them. They thought that if Balaam cursed them, that their advances would be restricted and they would no longer become powerful, and Midian would keep all of its stuff and its location. So the Midianites come and say, hey, Balaam, come and curse Israel. And he says, no, I don't have the liberties from their God to do that. They say, fine, but we really need you to consider this. So how about if we sweeten the deal and we'll throw some more money in the pot? And they bring these princes and they try to impress him, and they say, hey, come on, Balaam, we'll make you rich, we'll make you wealthy, we'll make you famous. We just need you to come and curse the Israelites. And Balaam says, let me check with God. And he checks with God, and God says, you can go with them if they call you one more time. If they text or call or email you one more time, you can go. And so Balaam thought he got the green light from God. Why? Because he was greedy. He wanted that money. He wanted that fame. And so he got up the next morning and he saddled his donkey and turned the key and said, I'm going to go with the Midianites and curse Israel. But they never called him. They never texted him. They never emailed him. He went because he wanted the money. So what happens? He has vehicle problems. And it's one thing after another. First, the vehicle, his trusty Cadillac donkey, was heading, and all of a sudden it veered off into the field. I mean, it just lost its alignment and just went off into the field. What happened? Well, there was an angel standing in the way. Balaam couldn't see it. The donkey could. And so he smites the donkey and says, get back on track, and he steers her back onto the road. Well, they get through this area where there's a vineyard wall on either side, and the donkey's going, and all of a sudden the angel shows up, and the donkey quickly goes left and crushes Balaam's foot on the wall. And Balaam, stupid donkey, and smites the donkey and says, stop it. And off they go, and then just a moment later, they get to a place where the donkey can't thrust himself into the wall, can't veer off in the field, and the angel of the Lord has a sword there. And did I scare you, Rhea? Okay. Take the emergency. Is that okay? Okay. He gets to this place where it's an alley, and the donkey just sets right down. And Balaam's all upset and hits the donkey. And I love this story because the car talks, right? The car says, why are you smiting me these 3 times? But look in your Bibles what the donkey says in verse 30. Verse 30, the ass said unto Balaam, this is Numbers 22, verse 30. We're almost done, I promise. The Bible says that the donkey said these words to Balaam the prophet, who's supposed to be full of insight. Am not I thine ass, upon which thou hast ridden, ever since I was thine unto this day? Am not I your car? Haven't you had me forever? Was I ever wont to do so unto thee? The donkey says to the owner, hey, have I ever done this before, dummy? Right? Have I ever veered off? Ever? Have I ever just sat down? Ever? Have I ever just thrown your leg into the wall? Ever? Was I ever want to do this? The donkey's saying to the guy, the prophet, think. I've never done this. Meaning, something's up, pal. Oh, and I've never done one of these three things, let alone all of them in one day. Yeah, maybe a donkey gets spooked once in a while, but have I ever done all this at once? See, this isn't me, prophet. And that's when Balaam looked up and the angel manifested himself and showed himself to be there the whole time. Verse 31. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam and saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way and his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed down his head and fell flat on his face. That's the response God's looking for. Verse 32, and the angel of the Lord said unto him, wherefore hast thou smitten thine ass these 3 times? What are you doing hitting your car 3 times? Behold, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before me, meaning you're going in the wrong direction. It's corrupted. Verse 33, and the ass saw me and turned from me these 3 times. Unless she had turned from me, surely now also I had slain thee and saved her alive. And Balaam said unto the angel of the Lord, listen now, he said, I have sinned. For I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displease thee, I will get me back again. Point being, the angel saw, or the donkey saw what the prophet didn't see. And we go through life, and things happen to us, perhaps in one day, or in 1 week, or in 1 month, or in 1 year, things that are just not consistent enough with the randomness of life, and things happen and we say, boy, why is my car acting up? Why are all my appliances dying? Why is my family just off the wall? Why are things at work so crazy? It's just that time of the year or that phase of life. Maybe you're missing what's so obvious to a donkey because you're focused on the money or whatever you're chasing on the other side of that. You know, God is withstanding us at times. God is directing us in a rough direction at times. God is doing things in our life, and shame on us if we don't recognize it. We may not know why. That's hard to figure out. But if we can identify who, well, then God has your attention. If you can say, Father God, I know that all this stuff cannot be by coincidence. You must be behind it on some level. I don't know why, but Father, show me. God, I want to be humble before you. I want to submit to you. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to resist you. I certainly don't want to ignore you or deny your presence in my life. But God, if you're doing all this, please show me. And now you spend your days conscious of what God is doing instead of complaining why life is bad. There is a drastic difference between fighting life being hard and life is just so difficult versus, God, what are you trying to teach me? Father God, what is it I need to know? It's a whole different approach to life that way. We spend years angry with life, and we need to stop getting angry at life and submit before God. One bad thing after another. I believe in bad luck. I really do. But I don't believe that bad luck is consistent in a world that is random. So if you're facing consistent misfortune, there is a good chance, a very good chance, you are on God's radar, and His hand is in your life. Let's stand and have a word of prayer.